Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is episode number 36 of the Unboxing AI webinar series. And I am extremely excited that we can start the year with a celebrity, if I may say so. Uh,
You're too kind.
yeah, well, you are for us, right? A small world of radiology. All the 350,000 radiologists out there. So for those of you who don't know, the Unboxing AI webinar series happens every week now on Thursdays, so I can finally have a live on Fridays. So,
Congratulations.
so every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, come hail, come shine. There is a webinar, and we call all of CARPL's friends, customers, partners, uh, you know, uh, people who inspire us, and try to dig a little deeper into their journeys and learn from that. Uh, excited, exciting to see people still trickling in, so that's always a good sign. And for those of you who don't know what CARPL is, well. We are your friendly neighborhood AI platform, right? FDA approved. We include the world's largest AI marketplace as well. We now have 154 applications from 66 different vendors and help you navigate this entire ecosystem of what AI do I use, how does it get integrated, what is its performance, and stuff like that. So without further ado, Brian Casey, thank you so much for joining.
You bet. It's a pleasure to be here, Vidur.
Yeah, no, as is ceremonious in such things, quick intro on Brian. He's when we received the bio that Brian sent, it's severely underplayed. Everything, Brian, that you've done, and it's incredible, and that's one of the things that inspires us is the humility that you bring with yourself. So Brian is the managing editor of the Imaging Wire newsletter slash news outlet, is what I'd say. Twice a week, we are all used to reading your work, Brian, and thank you for it. Prior to that, for many years, Brian was the managing editor at Aunt Mini, and created essentially enlightened the world about the happenings of our industry. And thank you for that. I think, Brian, it's been 30 years since you've been doing this.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you remember your first article that you wrote?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I
Sorry,
do
I
I
know this is
remember
like
my
totally
first
off
article?
script, but
Yeah, I know. That's good. No, you're gonna throw a curveball at me right away. I was working at Diagnostic Imaging magazine, if for a lot of you like really old timers out there, and I was working at a newsletter, an industry newsletter called Diagnostic Imaging Scan, and so I started out covering vendors, and you know what was actually, I don't remember my first article, but I do remember I do remember my first aha moment when it was the Society of Nuclear Medicine meeting in Toronto in, I think, 1993. And I at that point I had been working at diagnostic imaging for a year, and I was like in over my head for a year. Like I was like, what is this radiology thing? What's nuclear medicine? Does it use nuclear reactors? What is all this stuff? I've got no idea how any of this stuff works. What's MRI? What are all these acronyms? And I was just sort of underwater for a year. And then I went to the S at Becca that was just S&M, Society of Nuclear Medicine in Toronto, and it was my second one. And I remember walking around on the floor and I go, I know what that is. That's a dual head gamma camera. I know
wow.
what that is. That's a triple head gamma camera. Wow, I understand this. And it was kind of like the lights went off, and I was like, wow, I think I can do this. So that was like the aha moment that I still remember. And I still have a fond place in my heart for nuclear medicine. And
No,
because of that, because it
that,
was sort
that
of the first. It was the first part of this huge world of medical imaging that I really started to understand.
and so what is your background, Brian? Like, are you a journalist like by training as well, or how
I
did you know what a
actually
dual head gamma camera is like if you saw it for the first time?
I actually, I'm not a journalist by training. I've never taken a journalism class. I was
Wow.
actually in school. I studied broadcasting.
Oh,
So when
okay.
I was in college, I wanted to be a radio DJ, and so it's
Nice.
how did I end up being a writer? It's kind of funny because I went to college and I took all these broadcasting classes, and then I got out of college and my first job was writing, and then I just had all these writing jobs, and so I said to myself, what did I go and study broadcasting for 6 years because I got a master's? Why did I study broadcasting for 6 years? Because all I'm doing is writing now, and I all this broadcasting stuff is just sort of worthless. But look at me now. I with the internet, the internet has really opened
Everybody's
up.
broadcasting.
Yeah, I mean everybody's broadcasting. Journalism has changed a lot. Where we're not journalists anymore, we're content creators, and we're doing webinars and we're doing videos and like all that stuff that I had like put away for 20 years and hadn't used has kind of come back and is serving me, reasonably well. So that's kind of how I
Interesting.
came around it. How did I get into radiology? Once I got out of college, I worked a couple jobs. I worked at a local newswire in the San Francisco Bay Area that covered things like car crashes and things like that. And then I had a job at a restaurant industry newspaper. Um, and I did that for a little while, and then answered an ad in the newspaper for a magazine called Diagnostic Imaging Magazine. And I went in and I met this guy, Peter Ogle, and they offered me a job, and kind
Wow.
of haven't looked back.
Nice, nice, nice. And is there like, something that you thought will happen as a trend in radiology that didn't? If you just go back, say, a couple of decades and, you
I
look at
would
how things
say
are
there are
today.
some things that I thought wouldn't happen that did happen.
Oh, interesting.
Um, One thing is handheld ultrasound, because I remember
Ah,
when the first Sonosite scanners came out, and I was like, these things are toys; they're not going to go anywhere. You have to have ultrasound on a big cart that rolls around, and I was just like, nobody's going to buy these little Sonosite things. But look at what's happened. I mean, it's the electronic stethoscope now.
yep.
Um, they're everywhere, and so I was way off on that one. Um, Another interesting thing is PACS. I think we all recognized early on that PACS was the future and that film was, eventually going to go away. So I wouldn't say I was wrong on that one, but it is interesting at how much the radiology's conversion to digital has changed the nature of the work, and
Hmm.
in ways that people don't even recognize anymore. And so many, I don't think there's very many radiologists still practicing who will remember, putting a film up on the light box and looking at it anymore. So, but I kind of remember that whole conversion, and I think that it's changed things in so many different ways, and has set the stage for AI,
Yep.
because you wouldn't have AI if you didn't have digital information to analyze. So I think that's something that I knew that PAX was going to be a big deal, but I didn't really realize just how big. A lot of other things, CT, the fact that the CT has had so much longevity, because when MR came along, a lot of people were like, well, there goes CT because MR doesn't have radiation. And it's incredible at how CT has held on and grown. And the biggest thing is how much the radiation has gone down.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did something in Imaging Wire. It was our first issue of the year, um, and it talked about radiation dose from CT, and the you know the fact that doses in CT are getting so low, is really something incredible.
No, that's pretty cool because I always like to, understand like predictions that didn't happen, uh, and then, predictions that sometimes just uh, blow away whatever was predicted. And I think
Yeah.
it's interesting that, you thought that with the coming in of MR, CT will go away, and here it is, holding its own very, very
Oh,
well.
bigger than ever.
So
Yeah.
correct, correct, correct. So also for everybody who's joined, as a matter of principle, we will prioritize your questions over our discussions, which we can do like forever. So please feel free to shoot, any questions you have. Brian covers a wide range of things within radiology, so I'm sure he would have an opinion on many, many things. So don't hesitate. You can use the Q&A, the chat, however, don't hesitate. Brian, we were talking about this just before the webinar, that what is so talking about RSNA, right? Uh, Besides the relearning of the fact that Chicago is very, very cold, and
It's
now
cold.
and now next year again, RSNA is in December, so we'll get to learn that again. But
Yeah.
what did you learn that you didn't know before?
I learned a lot about foundation models in
Hmm.
AI. And I'm not sure how many folks out there, I'm sure most of the folks out there understand what AI foundation models are, and I'll apologies if I get it wrong. But foundation models are designed to enable developers to train AI more quickly, because as you know, the big challenge in developing AI is getting data to train it on. And so in order to have an accurate AI algorithm, just need to have thousands and thousands of cases, and they all have to be annotated, and you have to know what the diagnosis was, et cetera, et cetera. And foundation models enable that process to be sped up. And I don't want to go in and say why for fear of being wrong, but it enables that process to be sped up. And some of the stuff that I saw at RSNA that was the most impressive was the use of foundation models and generative AI, which is kind of a related area, to get functionality out of AI that was a lot easier than if you didn't have them than before. So that was one of the things that I thought was really the most interesting. I thought there was a lot of development and interest in reporting, using AI for reporting. So when the first AI systems came out with IBM Watson, it was pixel analysis. It was looking at
Yeah.
X-rays and CTs and saying, "Hey, there's a infarct in there or whatever." But I've been really surprised at how many vendors are targeting the reporting segment, of helping radiologists draft reports and helping radiologists take the existing reports and make them more patient friendly by dumbing down the language, or making it more basic so that patients can understand. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought workflow was huge at RSNA.
Mm.
Um, Radiologists seem to, based on what I've heard from radiologists, like they don't feel like they need help analyzing images or detecting pathology, but they do need help with their workflow.
Yep.
They do need to do it more efficiently. And if you have an AI algorithm that can take all the cases that are normal or most likely to be normal and just take them out of the work list and let the radiologist focus on the ones that just have disease, then they'll probably be more efficient and maybe even more accurate.
So Brian, like, one thing that caught my eye is also the fact that there seem to be PACS startups emerging, right? Like Sirona, of course, Cameron, we've been seeing them for a while, and now there's New Lantern. Uh, what is your opinion on that? Like, does the world really need more PACS, or does
Well,
the world really need better PACS? I don't know.
well, I think the latter. I think that software change, as you know, software is constantly changing and getting better, and a pack software that worked great 20 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't work that great now.
Yeah.
And so, you're constantly seeing this churn in the PACS market, where companies that were on top of the world 10 years ago are kind of also rans now, because you have that issue of supporting a legacy install base. And a lot of times when you have a legacy install base of people who bought your software 5 years ago and you have to support them, that can make it more difficult to come up with something that sort of changes the game and really throws everything out and is brand new, because you're afraid of alienating or jeopardizing your legacy revenue stream. So it seems like a lot of the companies that appeared at RSNA that you noticed are companies that have all-in-one solutions,
Mm.
which are reporting,
Yeah.
image analysis, work list. So the value here is just everything's bundled into one thing. And I think that's the value proposition that they're making to radiologists and radiology facilities, which is, instead of having to buy each component of your technology stack from different vendors, why don't you just buy the whole thing from us?
I think that is very powerful, right? Because I think till a few years ago, deconstructed PACS was kind of the thing, right? Like you
Yep,
buy a separate risk, a separate work list, separate,
yep,
separate
yep,
VNA, separate viewer, separate AV,
yep.
and now it's just, one thing that kind of at least serves as a single layer for all of that. And then we also talked about so if I just to summarize your learnings, foundational models, reporting, and workflow were the three kind of things that caught your eye, which is I think fairly consistent um, with what was new there, at least in my opinion as well. And
And then there's
then,
also the cloud Vidur was also a huge
huh,
deal. I mean, it almost goes without saying that that was really important.
but do you think like providers are excited about cloud, or do you think vendors are excited about cloud?
Well, vendors have always been more excited about cloud, and and we've been talking about cloud for years now. But I think that the providers are finally getting to the point where they see cloud as a viable solution to a lot of their problems.
Hmm.
One of which is cybersecurity, and there was always, providers were always like, well, I can't do, put my data in the cloud because then somebody could come along and hack it. And what they're finding is that the hackers are perfectly adept at hacking the data that the provider, in the provider's own data center. And in a lot of cases, well, I think in all cases, the hyperscalers like AWS and Google and Microsoft are way better at cybersecurity
Yep,
than somebody at a hospital in the rural Midwest.
correct.
And then the other issue that I think is important is the personnel issue, because it's getting really challenging for healthcare providers to find personnel of all types, but especially IT personnel.
Yep.
And you really need top-notch cybersecurity IT personnel to make sure that your data is secure. And who is most likely to have that are the big guys.
No, that makes sense. Let's take a couple of questions, Brian. Uh, first one uh, that came in is from my colleague Sarthi. Uh, you know, uh, they ask, how have trends around AI changed? Are there issues that persist versus those that seemed big but seem to have disappeared, I assume, is what he's saying, but seem to have disappeared overnight. How has
Well, the
audience
number one
perception?
thing,
Yeah,
yeah, the number one thing of what's disappeared overnight is this idea that AI is going to take radiologist jobs, because
yeah,
when
correct.
IBM Watson came out that one year, whatever year it was, 2016 or 17, radiologists were freaking out and saying this is going to take our jobs. And then you had oh God, what was that guy's name? Hinton, who said,
Yeah,
got the Nobel Prize last year, but he said that, stop training radiologists. And that had a material impact on the number of medical students that were picking radiology as a specialty. I mean, it went down. And I think that concern has gone away. And
mm,
radiologists now, you know, there's a workforce shortage in radiology. Radiologists now see AI as a solution to their problem. They don't see it as a threat. So that's one issue that I think has gone away. I think that since AI started, the one thing that's come up more has been there's less emphasis, like I said earlier, there's less emphasis on pixel analysis and more emphasis
Mhm.
on workflow and efficiency. And so you're seeing fewer solutions, and not to say these solutions have gone away, because I mean, there's some great solutions out there for pixel analysis, but there's really been an explosion of companies that are targeting things like reporting and things like operational analysis is another one. You know, you've
Mhm.
got AI that can create kind of a digital twin of your imaging facility, and then you can play around and you can say, well, what happens if I add a CT scanner? What happens if I take away a technologist? You know, how does that affect my efficiency? So those things are really exciting. So I think that the thing that I see that's changed the most with AI is how it's moved away from just 100% focus on pixel analysis and into other areas of workflow and efficiency and things like that.
No, I think that's very insightful, especially it does seem like an overnight change. The fact that, folks are now open to AI and just the kind of inbound that we get, right, is also reflective of that. That's pretty cool. Next is, we have another celebrity asking a question, Michael Canavo.
Hey,
Uh,
Mike.
so Mike asks, radiologists are having a much more significant input into the PACS buying decision-making process. Do you think that's a positive or a negative, and why?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think it's positive. I don't see it as the kind of the way it was when I first entered radiology, which was you had a radiologist who said he wanted the newest CT scanner, and so the hospital got it for him to keep him.
Mhm.
And it usually was a him. um, so I don't see radiologists as having as much influence over purchasing as they did 30 years ago. But I think that having the radiology, with any product, having user input into the purchasing decision is a good idea, and is a necessary idea. And so I think that's great. And I think that there also seems to be a trend where AI developers are getting radiologists more involved kind of earlier in the development stage, um, kind of user focused design, and I think that's a positive thing as well.
Yeah, agree. Uh, Next up is from another of my colleagues, Aditya. Aditya asks, how will using both general purpose and custom-built Gen AI models for regulated tasks like drafting reports and unregulated tasks like EHR summaries uh, affect classification as a medical device for some of
Oh
these tools.
gosh, I think that's
So yeah, Aditya is part of our regulatory team, so I can
I would
see
say
where
probably
that
that'd be
question's
something
coming
to
from.
direct to Hugh Harvey or somebody like that. Um, That's a really good question. I don't know that I'm qualified to kind of go into that much detail on that, but I think the regulatory aspect of AI is really important and is really something to watch. And the FDA, I mean, just this week, the FDA issued a new guidance for what it's going to be expecting in terms of regulatory submissions for AI products. And in November, the FDA formed a new digital health advisory committee. And the first meeting was to talk about generative AI. So the FDA is really looking at regulation really closely. And, the big challenge for them is how do you regulate a product that changes after it's approved?
Yeah, correct.
Just by its very nature. And when you have a CT scanner and that gets cleared by the FDA, every when the vendor if the vendor makes changes to it, it has to go through a new regulatory process.
Yeah.
But with the AI, because it's constantly learning, it's the AI algorithm that you have a year from now is going to be different than what got cleared. And from a regulatory standpoint, like how do you manage that? And so I think that's what the FDA is struggling with. And they also, another recent development was the predetermined change control plans. which is, as far as I understand it, a mechanism where a vendor can say, you know, this is our plan for making changes to the
Yeah.
algorithm or adapting to changes to the algorithm without having to go in and get a brand new, FDA clearance.
Yeah, correct.
So
I
those
think
are,
the
a
entire
couple of big
industry
issues.
is waiting for that, right? Because that just makes so much evolution possible, right, for these models. So I'm sure it'll happen soon.
Yeah,
We're
and
just
that's the
gonna,
challenge that the FDA has is balancing, balancing safety with the need
innovation.
to continue innovation.
Yeah. Cool. Next is Shivangi. They ask, what are the best use cases if we utilize agentic AI to radiology, or do you think a hybrid model would work better? Uh, I honestly don't know what agentic AI is. It's also, one of those
I
words.
would suggest you hit up Woojin Kim over
Yeah.
at Rad AI. He's a real expert on that. I'm just going to refer questions to people I think can answer them. My my understanding of agentic AI is that it's an AI that's like an agent. It can
Yeah.
maybe take questions and respond to, kind of like maybe a chatbot or something like that. Um, so I'm trying to learn more about agentic AI. I think if it fulfills all the potential that a lot of folks have said that it has, I think it's going to be it'll be pretty important. But I think we all need to understand it a little bit better.
Yeah. No, for sure. Next up we have Amit, uh, Amit Gandhi. Amit asks, what are your views on how one should look at measuring AI companies? Who's succeeding and what's working?
That's a really tough question because so many of them are privately held, and you don't have a lot of vision. You don't have a lot of insight into how they're doing. I think that probably maybe one of the best ways to judge how a company is doing is their partners. And you guys, Carpel, are a great. You're one of the most prominent platform companies, and so I think that if somebody's not on Carpel, that would be kind of a red flag. But look at their partners. Who are they partnering with? Do they have relationships with important companies that have deep penetration in the market like Carpel and like some of the other platform companies, or are they just kind of, out there, doing their own thing? I mean, that would be one way that you can take a look at it. Um, Another thing, like, have they published research? If we're talking about an AI company that has clinical algorithms, what's the research behind it? There's a paper that just came out this week from a AI developer in Germany called Vara,
Yeah,
and I think it was like 436,000 women that were where their breast screening algorithm was used, and so I mean, that indicates that it's
it's
got really
crazy.
wide usage in the real world.
Yeah.
So I would probably the first thing is would you look at their partners and look at what like the clinical backing for what they've done.
Oh, cool. Nice. Thank you. We have another question from Michael. They ask, there are over 1,000 AI algorithms from over 700 companies. Do you think the market is large enough to support all these products and vendors, especially since NTAP type of reimbursements will be the exception rather than the rule?
I think the question is more: are there enough venture capitalists to support all those companies? um, no, the answer is no. Clearly,
Yeah,
the market right now isn't big enough to support all those companies. Um, but that's sort of the nature of you know de- medical development.
yeah,
Is you've got a lot of folks out there that are just are putting investing in technology to hope and hit a home run and be the next
mm,
Sonosite or whatever it is. So no, the market isn't big enough to support that many companies. A lot of folks are um, predicting consolidation in 2025. In our top radiology trends article that came out today, Steve Holloway of Signify Research predicted that 2025 would be a year of consolidation in AI, and he predicted that you're going to see category leaders emerge. And I think what he means by that is you're going to see companies, AI companies that are clearly, when you think about mammography AI, you think about a particular company. When you think about chest radiography AI,
Yeah.
you think about a particular company. And so I think that you're, or a coronary artery calcification on CT scans. So I think you're probably going to see some consolidation where category leaders are going to be trying to scale up and get a dominant position in a particular niche.
No, that's a great point to end on. Uh, I think, you know, my take on that, of course, we're a platform, so we're biased, is that with time, the need for venture capital is going to go away, right? It's like, do you really need a lot of money to build an algorithm, right? You take Google's foundational model and you take Google's free, cloud credits, and you partner with a segment, you ask them for some kind of data, and you're on the way. Of course, you
That's
need.
a great point. It's like the democratization of
Yeah, it's
AI
like
development.
the App Store, right? Like the initial, apps for the iPhone, you needed a lot of money to make them, and now there's apps that help you make apps and stuff like that. But no, thank you, Brian. This was a pleasure. It was an honor, and thank you to everybody who joined. A couple of questions we couldn't get to, uh, fantastic session. Thank you so much, Brian, and I'll see you next week.
All right. See ya. Thanks for
Awesome.
the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.